Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Britt Williams' short film, Behold a Lady. The IMDb page for this does not list the characters' names with the performers, so I don't remember the characters' names because I saw this about a little over a week ago on a plane ride with a number of other short films that I also watched. So I don't remember the characters' names. Some of them I think names aren't established for them in the film. But this is a film about a high school, I suppose, young woman who is sort of, IMDb describes her as tomboyish. That's probably fair. She's initially depicted with African American, I guess is worth sort of mentioning. So she has the sort of, I don't know if they're formally cornrows or just very tight braids. I don't know that much about hairstyles, as you might reasonably guess. She's wearing her boyfriend's jersey. She's wearing sweatpants, etc. His basketball jersey. She's wearing sweatpants, sweatshirt, etc., etc. So she's very sort of casual, comfortable-looking clothes. And they are studying for the Latin quiz team, which, I mean, is cool. I don't know how many schools actually have Latin quiz teams in America in 2025-ish. I think this is quite a recent film. I didn't check what year it came out, but quite recently. But that's fine. I'm not bothered about that. And he breaks up with her in the midst of her studying for this team, which is quite important to her. And he then sort of gravitates toward this other young woman who's like wearing a dress and her hair is much more sort of Europeanized, right? So I do know this about hairstyles, is there is sort of a divide among African American women or women of African descent sort of across the board about whether or not things like straightening one's hair is a desirable practice. Because traditionally, I say traditionally is kind of a bad word because that implies that it's sort of historically more white-looking hairstyles been a way for women of African descent to align themselves with Eurocentric beauty standards. Now that's increasingly seen as problematic, quite justifiably in my view. Not that I'm entitled to have that much of a view about how other people wear their hairstyles, but things like straightening one's hair was a way of trying to look more white to fit in with Eurocentric beauty standards in countries like the United States, in places like Europe, the UK, etc., etc. And increasingly, there is a movement back toward natural hairstyles. And so this is a significant issue within African diasporic communities. And a lot has been made of this. I actually did a little bit of research on this because I was writing about a collection of poems in which that issues of hair are addressed. So the protagonist of the film, seeing her now ex-boyfriend who says he wants to remain friends with her, gravitate toward this young woman who's much more conventionally feminine and who has much more sort of Eurocentric, who has shaped herself in this much more Eurocentric way. She decides that she is going to refashion herself. So she goes home Rather than the jersey, the sweatpants, etc., she decides she's going to put on this dress. She straightens her hair, she does her makeup, and she wears these high heels, seemingly with the intention, perhaps, or implicitly with the intention of regaining his attention. Now, this, of course, raises the fairly obvious sort of question of whether or not it is worth trying to change yourself to gain the attention of someone who has rejected you on the basis of who you genuinely are. And that, of course, is a major, major question, particularly in things like young adult fiction, young adult-oriented films, TV, etc., etc. This sort of question of, like, what do or should I sacrifice about who I truly am to try and win the heart of the beloved, or whatever it is? That's a very central question, because that is a struggle that we all, as young people, went through or go through if you're currently a young person. But it's also, in this case, quite racially coded, and it is quite gendered. And it's racially coded in that one of the things she does is straighten her hair and seemingly lightens her skin through makeup, etc., etc. And so there is that element of trying to align with these Eurocentric beauty standards. And the other thing that we get sort of repeated shots of in this very short film, like 12 minutes, I think, something like that, is a very, very concise runtime, is she looks down at the back of her heel where the shoes have started giving her a blister. And it gets progressively worse over the course of the film. And actually very, I think quite brilliantly, the final scene is her walking toward the camera, having sort of come to the realization that she doesn't really need this guy. And she slightly stumbles on the high heel, and she takes them off and just walks barefoot. I actually think it's quite a beautiful metaphor for this realization of her own worth and the truth of who she is as a person, as opposed to feeling the need to transform herself in order to acquire the acceptance of this person. So that's really very a really very interesting element of the film. The other thing that sort of signals the problematic nature of this transformation is that she goes into these tryouts for this Latin quiz team, and she's doing extremely well. Like, there's one other guy that she's in serious competition with for the first little bit, and then she sort of centers herself, and she just blows way past him. She's getting so many more answers right than either of the other two people trying out. And then this question comes up. It's something like, conjugate I love. And that was they were doing flashcards at the beginning, her boyfriend and herself, now by this point ex-boyfriend. They were doing flashcards, and that was the one that she wanted to practice with him when he broke up with her. And so it sort of stuns her for a moment, and then she basically drops out of this competition, and the other guy sort of blows past her and gets the last spot on the team. And so that notion of, like, love as a thing that can damage us. love as a thing for which we try to transform ourselves and maybe sacrifice who we actually are, and that in some sense that self-sacrifice can hold us back from achieving our potential is really quite elegantly played out in that moment. And so that sort of contributes to this sense of identity disorder that she experiences, that sacrificing these core parts of her identity in the pursuit of this person has cost her things in ways that she probably did not anticipate. So it's a really, really interesting movie. Again, quite a short movie, but it does a lot of interesting critical work within that time.